Final Cut Pro is the professional Apple video editor originally developed by Macromedia. Final Cut Pro is a very big player in the world of video editing, with many popular films being edited on this software. Final Cut Pro has also had a very solid existence as a video editor. Many prefer Final Cut Pro for its integration within the Apple ecosystem and its extreme level of optimization while running on the Apple Silicon chips. Many also prefer this software instead of Adobe's video editor Premiere Pro, since there is not a subscription-based model attached to it. For me, Final Cut was always something that I pushed to the side. Of course, I've made smaller projects in it before, but this was not anything serious.
Well, Sam, you want to go to the Long Pine Reservoir next? Right off 233?
Long Pine? No.
Why? Have you been to Long Pine?
No. Well, I guess we could.
Well, look, this Long Pine, let's turn on satellite view. It may actually look kind of cool. Let's get some satellites. Oh, ew, it looks so gross.
In this video, we will be covering the introduction of the app in the Mac OS X era, and the app today. This video will of course be edited with Final Cut so I can have a fuller understanding of the app. So if the editing seems off, no, I didn't hire an editor. In fact, if anybody wants an editor, please reach out to me via email. Sorry for the plug, but I think this move is pretty key in understanding Final Cut Pro as a software and tool in the professional world. In the last few segments of this video, I will be talking about what I think about Final Cut Pro and if I prefer it over Adobe, so stick around for that. With all that said, let's get right into the video with Macromedia. Macromedia was a company founded in 1992 as the result of a merger between AuthorWave and Macromind Paracomp. This company made a lot of early tools in web design, such as Flash and Dreamweaver. Macromedia was working on a high-end video editing software, at the time codenamed Key Grip. The man leading this project was Randy Ubilos, who was also the creator of Adobe Premiere. Ubilos is one of the pioneers in digital video editing. He is very important in the move to making professional video editing software land in the laps of the consumers. In favor of working on more web tools, Macromedia decided to abandon the pro video editing sector and sell off Key Grip. Key Grip was renamed to Final Cut and they began trying to sell it. Meanwhile at Apple, Steve Jobs was back trying to fix a completely broken company, and Steve was also trying to gear Apple towards the creative fields. We've talked about this actually previously on the channel. You know, Apple saw this app for sale and they decided to go for it. In 1998, Apple purchased the rights to the software and hired the entire development team. Apple added Pro to the title of the software and released version 1.0 at the National Association of Broadcasters in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Take a look at the video landscape today. At the high end of the video pyramid, you have products from Avid and Media 100 costing anywhere from $125,000 down to the low 30s. These are high quality products, but not so affordable price. Then you look at the bottom of the pyramid, you have outstanding products from the likes of Adobe with Premiere and Avid with Cinema. These are great products, but they're not fully featured professional products. So in between these two areas, the low end with Adobe and Avid, and then the high end with Media 100 and the Avid Media Composer, we are positioning Final Cut Pro, a fully featured professional set of tools.
That'll be out soon. This product combines the features that were previously only available in several different products, all into one, very easy to use interface. I think it's going to dramatically increase the number of people who will have access to creating great digital video. It's going to take advantage of all the new technology.
Now, and you're editing your video now, and now you're doing compositing, and you have to change mindsets left and right. Really, in Final Cut, we think of it as you're just making a movie. And you don't have to change mindsets or you don't have to change modes. It's all fluid, it's all available all the time. You've got a full set of compositing features as well. So it's as if you have an Avid Media Composer with about 50% of After Effects built right into the same interface.
To a friend or put it up on a user board and let other people use it. It's a really powerful feature that allows you to build effects within Final Cut Pro.
Apple had positioned Final Cut in between the much higher end software like Avid and at the time lower end products like Premiere. The promo reel did a very good job at advertising this. After Apple debuted the software, they did the usual, like locking the software down to Mac OS and selling at a much higher price point. Apple was selling Final Cut Pro for $1,000 but when compared to Avid, which was selling from $25,000 to well above $100,000, it really wasn't that much. A full Avid suite at the time could cost as much as $150,000. So when compared to Avid, Final Cut really was not that expensive. Final Cut Pro really started to get picked up in the education and indie film markets at this time. In 2000, Final Cut Pro started to get picked up heavily by those who were very frustrated with Avid's very high cost and the rigid system it came with. Final Cut Pro also added more compatibility with different forms of digital video, like NTSC at 29.97 frames per second and PAL at a solid 25 frames a second. This also made it very easy for students and amateurs to connect digital camcorders to their Macs and use the footage they gathered to edit. Adding in PAL support also gave the Europeans and Australians a much easier time editing their projects, since the PAL video format was the standard in those regions. In 2001, Final Cut Pro 2.0 was released. This was the first version to really be taken seriously for high-end professional work. More workflows to accommodate film, such as 24 frames a second, were added. Real-time editing was also now available for the supported hardware. This made the software gain much more traction with the broadcast and documentary industries. This trend in making the app more usable for pros is a trend we're going to see continue for the next few years. Final Cut Pro 3.0 is when the software became a serious competitor to Avid. The BBC certified the software for broadcast use as well, further cementing the software as a key player in the market. The software was also capable of being paired with Cinema Tools for film editing workflows. Cinema Tools was another app developed by Apple for filmmakers working with traditional film. For my younger audience, this means, the film off the film reels, where like a projector shines light through it, projecting the image on a reflective screen in a movie theater. But, if you're watching this, you probably already know what film is, so it's a null point. Cinema Tools was mostly used by independent filmmakers and film schools working with celluloid film. This software also provided cut lists for the negatives, so, where they need to be cut, that's going to be given to you as a list, and the digital film print is going to match exactly with the physical film print. Final Cut Pro 4.0 was a pretty massive update. Apple started to position Final Cut as part of a larger professional suite. This version included LiveType, Soundtrack, and Compressor. Now these were three other apps that assisted the user in making projects. LiveType was able to make animated text and graphics more accessible to those without Adobe After Effects knowledge. Live fonts were also built in for templates like typewriters, smoke, fire, etc. Soundtrack provided loop-based audio for soundtrack creation. This also matched the tempo and pitch that you wanted. As it's described from what I've researched, this is very similar to how Logic Pro acts today. Compressor is a dedicated app for encoding and transcoding media in a lot of formats. For those familiar with Adobe Media Encoder, they are very similar. In 2004, Final Cut Pro HD started to support high-definition video, which was a major milestone at the time. This was also able to take full advantage of the hardware like the G5 and FireWire high-definition video. In 2005, Final Cut Studio was released, which was Apple's new creative suite. This included Motion, Soundtrack Pro, DVD Studio Pro, and Compressor. Many features like native HDV and dynamic real-time effects were also a major selling point for the software. Motion was used for creating title sequences, animations, VFX, transitions, motion tracking, and stabilization, just to name a few. DVD Studio Pro was also able to create DVD menus, chapters, etc., everything that you could find on a DVD off the shelf. A production quality DVD video disc, you know what I'm saying. In 2006, Final Cut Pro 5.1 went into a universal binary to support the new Intel Macs. Now, for some context, Apple was going through a transition at this period from the PowerPC-based architecture to the Intel-based architecture. This transition started in 2005 and was a pretty gradual transition into Intel over about a 2-year period. The G5 was the last machine ever made by Apple with the PowerPC architecture chips. Final Cut Studio 2 was released in 2007, which added ProRes, which revolutionized post-production quality and workflow. Color was added to the suite, which was a color corrector. Final Cut Studio 2 was widely adopted in the high-end post and film industry. All was quiet in 2008. The software was being used more and more in films and television. In 2009, Final Cut became the standard in pro editing. Final Cut Pro 7 was released and became the status quo. More films started to use this, such as No Country for Old Men. As the years went by, more people started to wonder what was going to happen to Final Cut, since it had been a long time since Apple majorly updated the app. Apple skipped versions 8 and 9, then went straight to Final Cut Pro 10. Apple completely revamped the software. The interface became much more like iMovies. There was a magnetic timeline, a background rendering, as well as 64-bit support. Final Cut Pro 10 was often called iMovie Pro by critics. A lot of key features were also removed. Because of this, many people stuck to using Final Cut Pro 7 instead. There was a ton of backlash to this revamp of the software, and many people were very angry at the changes. In 2012 and 2013, Apple started to restore a lot of the features that were removed in Final Cut Pro 10. You may be wondering, why did Apple remove these features? Well, it was because of the fact that Final Cut Pro 10 wasn't an update to Final Cut Pro 7. This was a complete remake of the app, not using any of the code from Final Cut Pro 7. Apple restored features like XML support, multicam editing, dual viewing, and the broadcast monitor support. After this, Final Cut Pro 10 started to regain a lot of the trust it lost when the big switch happened. In 2014, libraries were added to better manage files and videos. 4K video also became the standard within the app. After this, the app started to gain a lot more popularity within education, YouTube, and mobile work on laptops. In 2015, Randy Ubelos retired, and Apple started to emphasize how powerful the app was in fast-paced, high-resolution editing. In 2017, Apple added 360-degree video support, more advanced color grading tools, HDR, and HEVC video. In 2018 and 2019, Apple started to optimize the app for the Metal API, and with the MacBook Pros. Final Cut Pro became a huge success in the online space. In 2020, Apple released the new Apple Silicon chipsets, and Final Cut Pro 10 was upgraded to run natively on this new chip. There was near real-time rendering for 4K and 8K workflows. This is when Final Cut Pro 10 dominated the market in mobile video production. In 2021, Final Cut Pro 10 became Final Cut Pro. They dropped the X and the 10, if you couldn't figure that out. There was better social media exporting, and it really enhanced the workflow generally, overall. I wasn't there, I couldn't tell you. In 2022, Final Cut Pro became almost seamless when using the M2 Max. iPad integration was also growing. Collaborative workflows with shared libraries over iCloud also started to come into play. Final Cut also started to give a niche in the YouTube, education, and mobile documentary work markets. In 2024, Final Cut Pro was released for iPad and it came with Apple Pencil support. Projects could also sync between Final Cut Pro for iPad OS and Mac OS. This further pushed it as a professional mobile video editor. Today, Final Cut Pro is a very affordable and stable video editing software. YouTubers, indie filmmakers, and educators all still favor Final Cut Pro. Avid is still the top contender in video editing, however. So that's it for the history of the software, but what do I think? Well, before writing this script, I decided to try and remake the first minute of my iMovie video in Final Cut Pro, and it was pretty easy. I changed some images and background music since I was really just experimenting with this. I didn't take it super seriously, and plus there was some stuff I couldn't find like drop shadows, but this is the result. iMovie is a classic and well-known starter video editing software. iMovie was mine and probably thousands of others' first form of editing video. In this video, we will be covering the introduction of iMovie, iMovie in the Mac OS X era, and iMovie today. Also, near the end of the video, I'll be including a small segment about working with iMovie in a more, not really professional sense, but some really useful workarounds that I used when I was younger trying to make YouTube videos with iMovie. With all that said, let's get right into things where it first began with the introduction of the iMac DV. The iMac DV was an upgrade to the first iMac, also called the Bondi Blue iMac. Everybody's seen it, we all know what it looks like, also known as the iMac G3. This iMac included several things. Some of the key features I want to talk about is the DVD-ROM drive, FireWire. Alright, so you just watched my very first creation in Final Cut Pro, and now you've just seen my very second creation, which was this entire video. So what do I think about it? I actually, I was pleasantly surprised. I was expecting, I actually have a little notepad. This is largely unscripted. So the first thing I want to say, yeah, I really did enjoy using this. This was pretty fun to use. I enjoyed it. It was very quick, very fast paced. Everything just worked. It felt great to use. That's the first good thing about it. I also like felt like thousands of titles and transitions that were provided to me, and they're real easy to find. They're all around the open. Everything's just there, and you can look at it and you can put it right in. It makes editing very simple and quick. I also like the magnetic timeline. Typically, when I'm using Adobe, I typically try to use the least amount of layers as possible, and Final Cut Pro pretty much does that for me because it will snap everything down to the lowest possible place. Now, there's some issues there. I typically like to keep a lot of files like far off on the opposite end of the timeline that I'm not using. Then I'll drag them in. That's just how I work. That's my workflow, and some video editors like that where you get the whole thing open, you place wherever you want. It's just how I work. The library system, it's weird. I want to say the file for this video is probably taking up already 30 gigabytes, which is completely insane because I know for a fact all that source footage I'm using in images is not 30 gigabytes. It's probably more like 4 at the most. So that's really my only dig at the software. The fact that those files get huge. I can check it right now, and it's gonna be massive. I know it. It's weird because, Apple sells a MacBook with 512 gigabytes of storage, and next thing you know, Final Cut Pro is taking up 1,000 gigabytes of storage, something crazy like that. So, yeah, let me pull this up and just tell you guys what it is. Yeah, so the file I'm referencing, I just have it entitled Final Cut Pro Bundle, is 23 gigabytes, which is completely insane because I'll give you the amount of data that's on my source footage file, which I keep it all into a file. And it's only 1.6 gigabytes, so what's going on there, Apple? I don't know. That's my one gripe, really, with the software. This software feels like it would run really well on a laptop, which I have used it on the laptop before, my M2 Mac, and it did run really good. There's no slowdowns on there, and that's a relatively older machine. There's absolutely no slowdowns on this run through editing this video. There's a few issues I noticed. It's a weird issue. It's like there's a crossfade. You guys, I can timestamp it. I'll put a timestamp on screen where it is, so you guys can see what I'm talking about. I don't know what's going on there. It may not even come up in the final rendered video. It could just be a glitch on Final Cut Pro's end, but who knows? I resetted the application. I restarted it. Nothing changed. So I don't know what's going on there. Yeah, but this is a really good application. Coming from Adobe Premiere, using that for the past 6 months to this, there really wasn't a huge learning curve. I feel like once you know one video editing software pretty well, you kind of know them all. That's just my personal experience. Coming from Vegas to Adobe wasn't that much of a leap. Adobe's leaps and bounds so much better than Sony Vegas. Yeah, and this, if I were on the move and I had all my files locally, or I was filming a documentary, Final Cut Pro is probably what I'd be using. And that's just my personal preference. It was very quick. It was very, very simple to use. It was very fun. It was fun to use. That's probably the best way I could start this. Say that. There was some stuff I couldn't find. For example, drop shadows recently. I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but I've been applying drop shadows to the to all like overlay images on the screen. I've been putting drop shadows on it just because I feel it gives it a little more depth. It looks a little nicer. I couldn't find anything like that, but I did use it on the text boxes. Speaking of text boxes, I don't know why the default outline color is red. I assumed it would be black, but for some reason it's red. That could just be something I messed up on my laptop years ago, and I guess it can carry over through iCloud. I don't know. I have no idea what's going on there, but if anyone else has an issue, let me know. It's just kind of a weird preset. I don't know why it's that. I couldn't tell you why. I don't even know how you change the default, so I didn't care enough to look it up. It would have made the workflow much more seamless and quick if it was defaulted to black, but who knows. Given more time using the application, if I do, which I probably will since I kind of enjoyed using it, I could probably figure out what's going on there. So if I had to list off my final thoughts for using this application, I would say, it's very seamless, it's quick, there's no errors, there was no errors at all. There's one error, because I don't know what happened, but I dragged a screenshot onto it after, and I guess it never went to my desktop, and then after I reloaded the app, it lost the file, which I didn't think it could do, because I thought it saved them all locally to that library, but who the heck knows. That's why I don't like libraries. Yeah, but that's all I really have to say about the app. This was a great app. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you guys stick around, subscribe, like, and do all that stuff. I'll be doing memberships. Consider joining the memberships, Helps out the channel a good bit. That's about all I can say. Yeah, go follow me on Instagram, too, at Joe, QUESDILLA. I misspelled quesadilla in that, so, But that's about it for today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'll catch you guys next week with the VLC Media Player video.